Okay.
So, Donald Mowat, you are the makeup department head on Blade Runner 2049, and you did the hair and makeup for Stronger, two more different movies I could not think of for you to have worked on this year.
Right.
Let's start off with talking about Blade Runner 2049. It was a highly anticipated sequel to Ridley Scott's film from 35 years ago. What kind of pressure did you guys feel going into this, having to compete with the original?
You know, I'm not going to lie. It was the most tremendous pressure, I think, in my career. And that, you know, that I think we all have it, even as kids, like before doing the huge book report. It was the most anxiety I think I've had on a job. The good news to that was I was honest with myself and with other people. And I called up Denis Villeneuve, who I'd worked with before, and who'd asked me to do the film, and said, I'm really terrified. I was working on Stronger in Boston. Denis was prepping from Montreal, where he lives. And he said, don't worry, Don, everyone is. And I think at that point, and, you know, Roger Deakins and I worked together a lot. I'd been seeing, you know, saw Roger and his team in LA, and everybody kind of felt the same way. So I really felt like we were approaching this as a team with costume and production design. But it did, yeah, I had some real anxiety.
Well, how did you, in your job as the makeup supervisor, how did you distinguish your work from that of the original film? I mean, how did you build upon it? How did you set it apart?
You know, it's a great question. Marvin Westmore did the makeup. I mean, brilliantly, because over 30 years, or, you know, the years I've been working on this, starting as an assistant way back, I've always referenced the work they did in Blade Runner, in Ridley Scott's film. So for me, it's iconic as it is to so many people, especially in the film business and costume and makeup. And but I really didn't look at it again. I watched it a couple of years ago, and then I watched it recently on television, and I had a copy of it with us, but I never really, I wanted to honor what we were doing, and that we were another film many years later. And I felt like I would start to maybe plagiarize or copy. I mean, the Daryl Hannah makeup was genius. What could we do? We couldn't, you know, I felt like there was a little bit of that in Mackenzie Davis. There were little elements in other characters that I think were inspired from that. But I certainly, you know, Ryan's, you know, there's a little Rutger Hauer, Harrison Ford, and Ryan. But I think we were making another film, and that had some inspirational, you know, texture to it.
Certainly one of the qualities that this movie shares with the original is the sense of dirt and grime and filth. Can you talk about how you express that in your work?
Well, you know, for that, I really have to say Ryan was, I'd never worked with him before. Denis knew me, and he knew that I was sort of looking at doing a very natural, less is more, kind of based in reality. And I think the film started picking up that tone visually with makeup, hair, costume. And Ryan was great because he had never been in a film like that. And, you know, he got in my chair, and Denis kind of let me do my thing. And you know, so we'd go dirty and gritty, and you know, he gets beat up and bloody, but we didn't want it to go corny. I hate to use that word, but there's a potential of sort of leading man, action guy, which we had to be careful. But it also felt a little Western, Clint Eastwood to it. And Ryan was great. It was hard on me because, as you know, we shoot everything out of sequence, and we started in June and wrapped in November. And I think the whole fight, the first time you see Ryan kind of beat up, we established 6 months before we shot it.
You mentioned shooting out of sequence. Explain a little bit about the challenges of that for makeup.
You know, everyone in film thinks their job is the hardest job, and the most important. But I really do feel like in this particular case, it was really hard on me and on what I had to do with Ryan, because for performance for him, there was a lot of sort of, how do we explain this? What happens here? And I had a certain amount of nervousness going, you know, are we going to do something that if editorial cut a shot, it makes me look like I did some really bad over the top makeup. Everything's a bit subtle. I kept it away from the center of his face so that the audience can believe it without being distracted. And I really enjoy working with Denis for that, because he appreciates that without being distracted. We have to feel the mood. And with Roger's, I mean, Roger makes everybody look good, and you know, in the sense of the mood. So all the makeup, the sweat, the dirt really felt, it felt right, but matching it is really hard over 6 months, that's for sure, with the same guy every day.
Explain a little bit the ways in which you do match it. I mean, what are your techniques for that?
Well, I always think continuity is for sissies, but you get a sense of how you're going to do it. Usually if it's last minute, I mean, if you stay out of the prosthetic world or appliance world and just work out a kit, traditional makeup techniques, I'm pretty quick. I mean, I have a sense that I know how to match things to my eye. People take pictures, we do all of that, but I still find that not always appropriate, because lighting changes, scenes change, the actors look a little different. So I just try to make it feel organic and that nothing distracts you. Even if I have to cheat something to sell it, like to get somebody back to how he looked at the end of 16 hours soaking wet as opposed to 2 hours, there is a difference, how the dirt moves and the blood. And, you know, there's a couple of times I cringe thinking, shit, you know, excuse my language, I didn't match that. And I watch a film, but we all do that a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Now, you mentioned Denis Villeneuve and Roger Deakins. The three of you have collaborated previously on Prisoners and Sicario. Again, two very different, one movie's different from the other, But what is that collaboration like?
You know, I think it's been incredible to work with people who are so committed to what they do. I met Roger and his team. I mean, it's a team. It's his wife, James Deakins. It's his focus puller. We all met on Skyfall and I think worked really well together, and we followed through. And in fact, they introduced me to Denis. So I think working on Prisoners, it just became a group I'm just really fond of, and it's a great, there's some camaraderie, and we sort of let each other do our, and very respectful. And you know, it's hard. It's hard in a business where we try to match up people and work with new people all the time. So I feel very fortunate to have been able to, these past, you know, 4 or 5 years, work with all of these guys.
Was there a particular moment from this movie that was difficult, or a character that was difficult for you? Or
yeah, so I mean, with Ryan, I think one, he is truly a leading man and a great actor, and he sort of, I think he led the film in terms of being number one there every day. What was really difficult for me and for my whole team was that we had a lot of actors coming in for short periods of time. Dave Bautista, which was an age makeup. His sort of casting was contingent on his makeup. So we had a camera test with him 6 months earlier, and I just decided to do it very traditional age with latex. We shot with him for 2 or 3 days. That was a challenge because there's so much physicality in the stunt work and the fight that would kind of rip it all up. So I'm glad we didn't do more extensive prosthetic work. Jared Leto, the contact lenses were really hugely a challenge for me because I was in Hungary working 12, 14 hours a day. He was in Los Angeles organizing to get a specific design of hand-painted lenses. That took a minute, and the time difference. So the logistics of what we all do, people would never realize. And Jared was so really into it. But those contacts, took a minute for me, and finding the look of them, and 2 sets, and you know, that we use the expression piggyback, where you put 2 sets of 2 contact lenses on each eye. So he was really blind and could not see. So that brings some added challenges of having to have somebody walk into the set, hold his hand, put drops in every 45 minutes, a maximum of 3 hours that they can be in. A lot of the people who came in were only with us for a short period of time, with maybe a day or 2 in advance for us to do a quick makeup test, or you know, that kind of thing, which is to be in Budapest and they're flying in from London or Los Angeles or, you know, Vancouver.
So, I mean, I think we all remember what it was like when we saw the movie for the first time, because we had no idea what to expect. You were on set every single day. What did you think the first time you saw the movie?
The first time, I was very lucky to see it because Denis allowed me to go to eFilm where Roger and they were working on it. I was quite mesmerized. You know, I'm usually a pretty harsh critic and OCD and perfectionist, like many people, you know, are. I was really happy with it. Visually, I think it's pretty stunning. I had some worries. You know, we always do. You know, did I do this right? Did I, you know, and we had a nice team. We had a very cohesive makeup team, hair team that I pulled together. But you always worry. Well, will this happen? Will this work out okay? Dave Bautista, I worried about because, you know, he had all this aged latex around his eyes, and I thought, oh God, Ryan's going to rip that off. And the visual effects, the marriage of some of the CG stuff with the makeup. But I was very happy, and I left kind of a very happy man that it looked really good, and I'm very proud of the project.
Let's switch gears dramatically and talk about Stronger.
Okay.
That's a movie. It's so very different. It's based in reality, and it's about real people.
Sure.
So what can you talk about turning Jake Gyllenhaal, movie star Jake Gyllenhaal, into everyday guy Jeff Bauman?
Well, you know, to work with Jake has been one of the best things that's ever happened to me. Just knowing him, and I'm not a saccharine sort of sentimental person. I think working on Stronger makes me want to cry a little bit because it was so touching. I mean, Jeff Bauman is a real life hero to me, and Jake really gave it a lot of depth and character on this little movie with not a lot of money that we shot in Boston. The commitment of everybody, Tatiana, Miranda, like the whole group, and we were there for 6 weeks with, you know, shoestring budget. I literally were calling up my suppliers saying, how much would it be for 2 of those as opposed to 4? And so that's a challenge. Jake is committed. Jake Gyllenhaal as the actor is so committed. I respect it tremendously, and we've worked on 4 jobs together, and it's really quite incredible to work with him, and very collaborative.
And you mentioned Tatiana Maslany and Miranda Richardson. I mean, can you talk about turning them into these Boston women?
Sure. Miranda was, you know, I really like her. I'm a big fan from way back in Dance with a Stranger. And she's so beautiful and has this sort of, you know, unbelievable profile and peaches and cream skin. So I was a little bit, wow, she's going to be Jake Gyllenhaal's mother. But, you know, we do these things. And so we had a great wig I had made for her in the UK. We had to rough her skin up a little bit, make her look like she smokes a pack a day. And then Tatiana is the subtlety, and she's so lovely. That she really agreed that we would sort of mirror however Jake is feeling and looking. It kind of is mirrored in her face and her complexion. She's a beautiful, beautiful woman. So we kind of took her from being that fresh-faced jogging, you know, really athletic to really distressed and exhausted sitting by his bedside. And it just worked. It was really, I don't want to say easy, it wasn't, but it took a lot of thought. But they made it so easy for me, you know, and Jake to want to go through that, and the medical team that gave me free advice, and they're, you know, really happy to tell me that looks like Jeff. That really is what he looked like in the hospital and ICU.
Talk a little bit more about that, because I mean that's obviously one of the pivotal moments of the movie, and it's very complicated and bloody and unpleasant to look at. Can you talk a bit more about that?
Sure. So the one thing with Jake was we thought, when I looked at the research, and I did a lot of research and talked to various people, was it's such a brief moment. So I brought on Jason Collins from Autonomous Effects to do the life casting and create the actual amputations, which we just see for a minute in the film. But they'd worked with me before. We brought Jake in, did the 3 sets of life casting, and it was like the marriage of visual effects and makeup helping hide his existing legs. But as far as his face, I did suggest to Jake that we change those Jake Gyllenhaal eyes. They're so distinct in the color of them. So I tried a kind of a hazel green and took him into my eye people in Los Angeles at Vision Care. And we tried, and I thought, let's go with a hazel or a brown contact lens. And we did 2 versions, and it made a huge difference. And Jake loved it. David Gordon Green loved it. And suddenly it felt a lot more like Jeff Bauman. And there's quite a haunting feel with when you look at Jake, with the difference in eyes, to me is so transformative. People approach Jake quite differently. So that was a huge part of that makeup. And just making him look like a guy who's taking a lot of opioids and painkillers and a sort of sickly color.
Right. And working with David Gordon Green, what was that collaboration like?
He's a great guy. I didn't know him before. He really he respects the process. He let us do our thing. He did, this thing of, some jobs get a bit micromanaged, and I think that some people feel that the actors have to look better than they really needed to. I think in Stronger I couldn't go far enough. I mean, there are moments where Jake looks so shocking to me that some directors might worry, and David is very confident in that we would make a better movie, and I completely agree. And Jake's commitment to that as well. And Tatiana, there's no vanity in this film. Everyone, I think, really stepped forward to say, let's make this and honor this piece and represent, these folks with a little humor as well.
Now, throughout your career, you've received an Emmy for your work on Mark Twain and Me. You also were recently nominated at the BAFTA
Right.
for Nocturnal Animals, speaking of Jake Gyllenhaal movies. What has that recognition meant for you in your career?
Well, I think it's just, there's a lot of work out there that doesn't get recognized because it's so subtle. And I'm from that school of thought that I don't want the makeup and hair to become the story. I just want to help them make a better movie. So whether it's the actor, the director, the writer, and work collaboratively, costume and makeup, there's so many elements. I think the recognition is incredible. But so often those more nuanced films, especially in makeup, seem to be, I don't want to say disregarded, but people don't always realize that, it's like great acting. It's less is more to me. And I think in makeup, a lot of that stuff that's really nuanced, people don't see as being as challenging or as difficult. And I really firmly disagree with that. But I think the work, especially BAFTA, Nocturnal Animals, was we had 2 very different films, one stylized in fashion and one more character driven. And oh, did I lose you there a little bit?
Oh, you just froze for a second. You were talking about how it was 2 different movies, one stylized more and one character driven.
Aaron Taylor Johnson, Jake, Amy, everybody was just a little off, different from what they'd all been doing. And that was quite an interesting experience and a really good one.
Well, Donald, congratulations on your films this year. Thank you so much for your time. It was very informative. I appreciate it.
I thank you. Thanks so much. Have a great weekend. Happy Thanksgiving.
You too. Have a happy Thanksgiving.
Bye-bye.